Welcome to Key Tech. Please describe this channel if you are interested in today's video. The EU's recent decision to impose tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles has attracted widespread attention around the world. The rise of the electric vehicle market has enabled Chinese brands such as BYD and NIO to quickly emerge on the international stage, especially in the European market with high cost-effectiveness and excellent technological advantages, which has brought a huge impact on old car companies. This phenomenon has not only had an impact on the economic level, but also triggered a multi-party struggle in the political field. Especially in traditional automobile powers such as France and Italy, their automobile industry is already famous for its long history and technology, but with the unstoppable performance of Chinese electric vehicles in the European market, these countries' car companies have gradually felt the crisis. Faced with the sudden loss of market share, France and other countries propose to impose tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, trying to protect their own automobile industry by raising tariff barriers. Although the vote support rate for the proposal was relatively low within the EU, the deep-seated fear behind it cannot be ignored. European old car companies, especially French and Italian car manufacturers, have long dominated the global market. Now they feel increasingly threatened by the strong rise of Chinese emerging companies. However, this decision of the EU has caused internal differences of opinion. Some countries, represented by Germany, are opposed to the tax increase policy. Germany's automobile industry also occupies an important position in the world. Its brands such as Volkswagen and BMW have a huge share and long-term cooperative relationship in the Chinese market. The tax increase policy will certainly cause a certain blow to Chinese auto companies, but for Germany's own automobile industry, this policy is tantamount to drinking poison to quench thirst. Once China takes countermeasures against German cars, the huge interests of German auto companies in the Chinese market will be seriously threatened. Therefore, Germany advocates responding to market challenges by improving competitiveness rather than relying on tariff barriers. Within the EU, the positions of France and Germany are in sharp contrast. France and other countries are eager to protect their local industries to avoid the market being eroded by Chinese electric vehicle brands, while Germany hopes to maintain economic and trade relations with China to avoid triggering a trade war. This divergence of opinion within the EU reflects the different interests of various countries in the process of globalization, and also indicates that the EU automobile industry may face an unprecedented challenge. Faced with the EU's tariff decision, China quickly took countermeasures, and the force was not small. China's first round of countermeasures targeted a series of core European export products, including brandy, pork, and dairy products. French brandy in particular is not only well known among European consumers, but also a symbol of French culture. Through these precise strikes, China sent a clear signal to the EU: China will not sit idly by, market competition is not one-sided, and the EU must pay for its decision. China's countermeasures are not only for retaliation, but more importantly, they are to protect the interests of domestic industries through these measures. Taking pork and dairy products as an example, China has a huge domestic market, and these anti-dumping investigations help stabilize prices in the domestic market and protect the interests of farmers. In addition, China's countermeasures also show a firm attitude. If the EU continues to impose tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, China will not hesitate to take more countermeasures. This is a contest of economic interests and political games between the two sides, and China's countermeasures are to support a solid line of defense for its own economic interests. At the same time, China has taken another major economic adjustment measure, shifting a large number of orders to Russia. This move can be described as a classic tit-for-tat response. Against the backdrop of the EU's tariff increase on Chinese electric vehicles, the choice to transfer the order to Russia not only enhances the economic cooperation between China and Russia, but also weakens the EU's competitiveness in the global market. This approach is not only to counter the EU's tariff policy, but also to lay a solid foundation for win-win cooperation between China and Russia. The cooperation between China and Russia, especially in the fields of energy, agriculture, and high technology, has gradually shown a closer trend. Russia is not only an important supplier of China's energy needs, but also has a significant increase in agricultural product exports in recent years. By strengthening economic ties with Russia, China has eased the pressure from the EU market to a certain extent, and by expanding trade cooperation with Russia, a new market balance has been formed. This move is undoubtedly a strong response to the EU, and it also foreshadows the further deepening of China-Russia economic cooperation in the future. As the economic friction between China and Europe continues to escalate, other countries around the world have also begun to assess the situation and adjust their respective trade strategies. Countries such as India and Vietnam are actively looking for opportunities to try to gain more market share in the Sino-European economic struggle. In particular, Vietnam, an emerging economy in Southeast Asia, has performed well in manufacturing and exports in recent years and is gradually becoming an important link in the global supply chain. Vietnam has taken advantage of the trade friction between China and Europe to rapidly increase exports and fill the possible market gaps, which has posed certain competitive pressures to both the EU and China. At the same time, Russia has been particularly shrewd in the Sino-European friction. At a time when cracks appeared in Sino-European relations, Russia quickly increased its penetration into the Chinese market. Especially in the energy field, cooperation between China and Russia has continued to deepen. Russia has not only increased its exports to China in terms of natural gas and oil supply, but also sought more cooperation opportunities in many fields such as agricultural products and high-tech products. This trend is not only a direct result of Sino-European friction, but also reflects Russia's strategic layout of taking the initiative in international trade. So, how will this contest between China and Europe develop? Is it a temporary economic friction, or a prelude to a deeper conflict in the future? This will directly affect the direction of the global economic landscape. Governments and companies must always be vigilant, because every decision in this game may have far-reaching consequences in the coming years. If the EU insists on imposing tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, it may protect some local companies in the short term, but in the long run, it may cause the EU to lose the huge Chinese market. For those EU companies that rely on exports, losing the Chinese market will be a huge blow. If China accelerates its cooperation with other countries, especially Russia, the EU will have to re-examine its trade policy. The global market is interdependent, and any unilateral protectionist policy will eventually come at a high price. In the context of globalization, the economic destinies of countries are closely linked. The economic friction between China and Europe will not only affect the trade between the two sides, but will also have a chain reaction on the global market. With the rise of countries such as India and Vietnam, the global economic landscape is undergoing subtle changes. In future international trade, whoever can find their way out in this game will be able to take the lead in global competition.